Welcome, everybody. My name is Beatrice Wynn. I am in charge of the community, and I'm so excited to have one of our great mentors with us today that we're going to talk about how to use mind maps to study, organize your information, and pretty much do everything you can to excel in your professional career. So I personally have used mind maps. They are like my go-to tool when I want to learn something because I am a visual learner. I don't have the greatest memory, so I need something that will help me just to organize information in a way that I will retain it. So, without further ado, I would like to introduce Sanjay and Sanjay Verma. And if we don't mind, Sanjay, we can go to the next slide just to give a couple of agenda and reminders. So, the agenda for today is like we will start with a couple of reminders. I will introduce Sanjay, and then we just start the conversation. And after that, we will do a Q&A, which we will just address some of your questions. So feel free to share any question, comment on the chat as we go along. Sanjay is going to make a very interactive session. So feel free to make comments and also questions on the chat. Sam and myself are going to moderate those. And then if we didn't address those during their presentation, we will do those during the Q&A session. So welcome. So the next slide, please. Great. So as I said, a couple of reminders. Share your questions on the chat. All of you are mute, but if for some reason you want to speak up, just let us know so we can unmute you during the open Q&A. We're going to have a session next week. It's going to be either Wednesday or Thursday, and it's going to be about resume writing and some tips and recommendations from the manager's recruiting perspective. And then, obviously, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to the community on Slack. We're always there, happy to help you. Anything that we can do to support your career and support your learning journey. So, again, thank you so much. Great. Next slide. All right. So, I have the pleasure to introduce Sanjay Verma. He's one of our cyber mentors, and I'm going to just to share a little bit about his background. So, Sanjay is an award-winning cybersecurity leader. He has over 25 years of experience, hands-on experience in multiple areas, including enterprise, risk management, operational security, governance, assurance, security information, and as well as strategy. His international career has spanned for about five continents, and pretty much he has a lot of expertise in highly regulated and complex fields such as the government, the MSPs, managed service providers, mining and resources, higher education, financial services, and also as well as health and consumer goods. Sanjay was the first CISO for an Australian university, and he's very passionate about nurturing talents and also coaching and mentoring other professionals in the field. And in fact, there are several of his mentees joining today as well this call. So we're super excited to have them there. And right now, Sanjay is the principal security advisor for Terra Firma in Australia, and he's responsible for managing and delivering the client engagement and taking his philosophical approach, what he calls from the bunkers to the board. So we are super glad to have Sanjay here, and we are thrilled to have him as our mentor, and he obviously holds multiple certifications. So whenever you have a question about certifications, you can reach out to Sanjay. So that is great. So Sanjay.
Great. Thanks, Faye, for the introduction, and thanks, Sam, for organizing this. And good morning, everyone. Good evening, everyone, if you are from Australia. So it's great to have you on board. So this particular session is all about mind map. Okay. And I'm sure that if I ask everyone a simple question in terms of how many of you suffer information overload at any given point in time, I think most of us will say yes. There has been times where we have all been inundated with a lot of information, and it's very difficult for us to collect all those information when we need that information to be available for whatever the purpose we may have. Okay, so the way I've structured this particular session is pretty much into three sections. So the first section, where what I'll do is I'll talk about I'm not a psychologist myself, but I will talk about the human brain and exactly how that works. My daughter, she is doing a course in psychology. And one of the great advantages that I had was I've been able to pick a few tips from her. So that has been great. In the second part of the presentation, I'll be talking about why mind map and what's the real advantage of using mind map. Because I haven't been using mind map for like 20, 25 years, but I've started using mind map maybe roughly over 10, 15 years now. And since I have started using mind map, one thing which I've realized is exactly if I would have mind map at the earliest stage in my career, I would have totally different experience in terms of how I operate, how I work in my professional life, and exactly how I learn from a career development point of view. And towards the third part of the session, I will talk about exactly, not only from a basics point of view, exactly in terms of people who are really interested in using mind map, how they can use mind map, but also from an advanced point of view, exactly what are the other hidden benefits that's available once we have got mind map, once we start using mind map. I believe the slide you have got is human brain. Is that correct?
That is correct, Sanjay.
Okay. So brain is one of the most complex part. Okay. And one thing which I wanted to share with you, everyone, is like our minds are like parachutes. Okay. And they only function when they are open. If it's closed, it won't function. And one of the complex part of human brain is trying to understand exactly how it functions. You know, there are a lot of theories about exactly how we can effectively use how many partitions are there in the human brain. One thing which I know from a theory point of view is there are 4 parts in the human brain. And as a male, you know, we tend to use just 1/4 of the human brain, whereas female, and this credit goes to you, they use like generally female, they use pretty much most of the aspects of the human brain. That's why they are multitask as a male. You know, I'm not trying to be biased here, but as a male, we are not that great in multitasking. Okay. And especially in this DNA, there has been inundation of information, as I mentioned at the start of the session. And when we have got a lot of information that we need to digest, what I personally call it is overload of that particular information. So generally what happens is that there are so many ways our human brain functions. And when I was thinking about exactly trying to understand the human concept and what are the key concepts that I can share in this particular session, one thing which I realized was it's really important for us to understand exactly the potential that we have got as a human being. And using that particular potential, what else we can do, okay? So when you think about the human brain, okay, what happens is, you know, we have got incoming sensory information, whether it's a touch, feel, and whatever that may be. And there are other aspects, the encoding aspect, the storage aspect, and the retrieval aspect. I will not go into that detail. Otherwise, people will think that this is the psychology course and I'm trying to teach people biology or the human physiology. But anyways, if I give you everyone as an example in terms of if we have to prepare for a CISSP exam, and I pick CISSP because that's one of my favorite topics, and you could pick anything, okay? So if you're doing studies or if you're doing any sort of career development course, and if you have to prepare for the exam. So the way it works is, if you see from an encoding point of view, okay, so the first thing what happens is we read the information again and again, and we try to memorize that information. Okay, that's the first aspect of our human brain. And then what we do is, if we are studying more from a CISSP point of view, and whatever the topic may be, then the information is retained in our memory. And finally, when we sit for the exam, guess what happens? When we face those sort of questions from a retrieval point of view, quickly we tend to remember those sort of questions, okay, and the answer to those questions. So in a way, it's a big CPU processing that is happening in our brain in terms of exactly how the information gets encoded, where it gets stored, and how that gets retrieved. And for technology people, we know exactly what's the cache memory is, what's the other sort of storage we have got in the technology world. But our human brain sometimes works in those sort of pattern. I hope that makes sense. Okay. So generally what happens is I've got one particular model that I would like to share, and this is called Atkinson-Shiffrin model of memory. Okay. So we have got three aspects of our memory. The first one is the sensory. So if I divide the memory into three parts, the first aspect of the memory is called sensory memory. Okay, the entry point. Okay, and as we go into this entry point, the capacity is potentially unlimited. Okay, or basically, if someone touches us, we quickly know exactly what is happening. Okay, however, if you can keep populating this particular slide, what happens is if we don't pay attention as part of this particular memory, what happens is we lose that information permanently. Okay, so it's there for a flash of a second. If you don't pay attention, the information will be lost. Okay, now the second aspect of that memory is called short-term memory. Okay, and this is where what we do is when it comes to short-term memory, so what do we call it is the working memory, and the capacity is generally plus minus, I would say 7-9 items that we can store in short-term memory, and the duration are generally in seconds, not even in minutes. Okay, so we feel something. If you don't pay attention, it gets lost, but if you pay attention, it gets retained in our short-term memory. Okay, and the next part of that short-term memory, we call the long-term memory, and this is where we store all our memories, the good memories, whether it's good memories or bad memories. And this is, again, called working memory. And this is where a lot of information is retained. Okay. And the capacity is absolutely unlimited. Potentially, I'm not super smart when it comes to memory, frankly speaking, I must admit it with everyone. It's like, I'm an average person, but I think I've learned a few tricks in terms of how to basically put a lot of information from short-term memory into the long-term memory. And the whole objective of this particular session is what are the tips I can share with you. So the duration is generally forever. Sometimes you had good experience or bad experience, and then you remember that information forever. Okay. So if you look into this particular number, okay, so you have to remember this number. If I give you this particular number and basically it's a random number and I will ask you to memorize this number, guess what will happen? Okay. Give it a go and see if you can memorize this number. Okay. So what happens here is now you can see here, if I can break down the number, and I'm just taking you through the journey in terms of how you remember, a big number, and we break that into small chunks that we can remember. What I've done here, I have added +61. So what I've done is 001161. I think that that's a country code. So instead of trying to memorize everything, I have written that as +61. And now it looks to me as if that's a mobile number or it's a land number. I don't know. Okay. But if I click that again and populate the next information, Sam, what you will see is this is how we break that information. This process is generally called chunking process. Okay. And every one of us can apply this process in our daily lives. So what you see here is I was given a large set of number. I tried to chunk it, and I have now come up with 3 chunks. Okay, 04007 and 6121. Okay, and it's easy to remember. And these are consciously and unconsciously the tips that we apply in our day-to-day life, and we generally don't pay attention exactly how we try to memorize information. But when we see this information in a structured manner, then we make sense out of it, and we say, oh, that makes sense. So this is called chunking. I hope that makes sense. So what I'll be doing now is before I move into the next slide, okay. Now, one thing which I might do, Sam, is can I ask you if I can quickly take control and share my screen so that, okay. Great. And if you don't mind enabling the permission, Sam, so that I can share my screen.
Yep, just give me 1 second, Sanjay. Let's get you up here again.
Wonderful.
All right, should be good to go.
Beautiful. Thanks everyone for the patience with this technical issue that's totally beyond my control. And now I am going on to, sorry, I've been too fast. Okay, great. So when we are young and we have got a lot of energy, okay. So I remember exactly when I was in my school, when I was doing my uni, I used to hardly sleep for like 5 to 6 hours. Okay, and people who lived with me at that point in time knew that basically I never used to sleep because I had a lot of passion and I used to try to do everything. Basically, you try to conquer the world, okay, and you think that you can run the entire business all by yourself. But as you get older, you know, eh, you know what? We all have got 24 hours in a day. We can't make more than 24 hours in a day. So what do we do? We need to work out exactly how we can do our time management. And it's one of the most critical aspects of anyone's life is how we do time management, how we do go with work-life balance. Okay. So as we get older, we have got family commitments. And frankly speaking, when my first daughter was born, it's been 18 years now. Okay. And let me tell you, and when my first daughter was born, and if I used to get 4 hours of sleep, guess what? My day was like when I used to go to work. I used to catch up on my sleep, basically hiding myself in bathroom, frankly speaking. Okay. So there has been times, or sometimes what you do is basically, we smoke, we have got our hobbies, we do everything. Unless you are like me, okay? And I take a lot of coffee and caffeine, and I've got coffee with me right now because here in Melbourne, it's going to be 11 o'clock at night, but that's me. And I'm sure that most of you will be basically relying on coffee because you only have got 24 hours and you have to do a lot of stuff. But on the left-hand side of the screen, what you can see is I requested my daughter, is like, can I take a photo of her laptop? Okay. And she was like, Daddy, as long as you don't, show exactly what the information I've got my screen. So I have to basically rub all this information. But you can see here, there is a lot of information. And when you see the information, the laptop screen of teenagers especially, it's cluttered. It's a lot of information because there is a lot of going on in their mind and there is a lot of processing happening. Yeah? Make sense? That's my laptop. And frankly speaking, that's a transformation. Okay. Now, I did not intentionally clean my desktop, but generally on any given day, I will have few icons on my desktop. But apart from that, there will be nothing. Okay. And there is a reason for that because we will talk about the mind manager and mind management and why that is so important. Because what we want to do is, as we get older, we don't want to think blindly. We don't want to just make notes for the sake of making notes. We want to really understand exactly what's going on and how we can manage our time effectively. One of the philosophical approaches that I use, I call it is working smarter than working harder. Okay. So why mind maps? Okay. And a lot of people have asked me the question exactly, okay, why mind maps? So why write contract on a piece of paper? And it's a graphical technique. Okay. So if you remember from your memories in your childhood, as a human being, what you will remember is exactly, when our parents used to get angry or when they used to love us, when we saw something in a graphical form. If someone, taught us, a mathematical equation in year 9 or 11, do you remember? I don't think so. Do you remember, Newton's third law of gravity or whatever Newton's law was? It's difficult. So the mind map is a powerful way to put pictures, to put imagination. So as an example, when you are in a meeting or a conference, if someone is saying something and if you're writing on a piece of paper quickly, what you are doing is the way human brain works is we can only listen to someone or we can think. Okay. So if you are listening, we can't think. And if we are thinking, we can't listen. Whereas with the mind map, what we are doing is we are pushing ourselves to get outside the comfort zone and visualize and start thinking while we are making notes. I hope that makes sense. And it does unlock the potential of the brain. Let me tell you, it took me a lot of time to prepare for CISSP exam. And the only reason I could gather the confidence to sit for the CISSP exam for two reasons. A, definitely everyone wants to sit for the exam. They want to pass it. But it comes with a hefty price tag. You don't want to pay $1,000, over $1,000 for an exam and fail it and then pay for that money again. So I think there are some personal benefits. So you do want to explore the potential benefit and the power you have got in your brain. And it enhances the productivity. And why it enhances the productivity is because what we are doing is we are trying to store the information like images. Okay, most of the time we do certification. Okay, and when we prepare for certification, what we do is we remember everything, gets into our short-term memory, and quickly we sit for the exam. We pass it, and guess what? 6 months later, we don't remember, and then we say, guess what? I don't remember exactly what was asked in that question. And that's one of the biggest issues that I see in the professional life, where we have got a wealth of knowledge that we accumulate when we study and we prepare for an exam and we do our professional development. And if we can't transpose that information in our practical life professionally, we lose a big chunk of information. We lose a big chunk of IP that we could provide to the community and help the community. So we all are busy and we all have got 9-to-5 jobs and we pay the bills. Okay. However, that's why I'm talking about the mind maps, is because the 6 to 12 time that we get at night, when we sacrifice our family time, is to build our skills. Okay, build our capabilities so that when we go back to work, from a 9-to-5 sort of pattern, we know exactly what we need to deliver, how we can be more efficient, and how we can differentiate ourselves. Okay, that's critical in the cybersecurity field, because if you don't differentiate yourself, I think everyone is same, and you need to stand out of the crowd and really demonstrate exactly how you can add value. So, okay, so without mind map, what you are doing is you are just writing on a piece of paper. Okay, whereas the simplest stuff if you're starting with the mind map is what you do is you draw a circle and that's your topic. Okay. And then what you do is you start framing, you start visualizing everything. And this is a screenshot that I've got from Google, which is just a simple example. And frankly speaking, I did ask my daughter exactly, can I use her notes? And that's an example of her notes. Okay. And she was trying to do it as a mind map before. And I really liked it, but I thought maybe rather than taking the photo and putting that on a slide, I'll keep something simple. Okay, so this is a simple mind map, and if you want to go for a job interview, if you are looking for a job, what you will do, okay? There are softwares available, there are technologies available, but you know what? Sometimes you don't want to spend money, you don't want to even spend $50 to go and buy your software. Okay, so what do? You can start everything on a piece of paper. So on the left hand side, it says, okay, what's my agenda? What's my topic? I'm going for a job search. And as we start populating the information, you'll say, okay, what are my target clients? Are companies that I'm going to look at? What are the sources? Do I go to LinkedIn? Do I go to Seek? What are the different resources do I go to? What are the documents do I need? Okay, do I need CV? Do I need some research information? How do I go about the application process? Okay, interviews. How do I prepare for the interviews? So as you can see, you can expand it and you can add it. And guess what? If I tick all the boxes, if I get the offer on the table, then great, thumbs up. So what you can do is you can build that relationship if you start using some sort of technology like mind map as an example. So when you are going through the application process, you can say, okay, the response form will look like this. And if I'm going through the application process, this is the remuneration I want. These are my terms and conditions are. So when you get an offer on the table, guess what? You have done the homework. You just need to go back, link that, open that information, and you will know exactly that these are your terms and conditions. These are the contractual amendments that you want, so that you are not waiting, or the company is not waiting 10 days for you to read the contract and get back to them. And they will see that efficiency and they will see how responsive you are. And that's a very good starting point. Okay. And maybe, the other example could be travel. So you may want to travel at this point in time with the COVID-19 situation. Obviously, we can't travel. And, but when you plan your holidays, what do you do? What are the flight information you need to capture? What are the different, options you've got available? Which one is the best, cost effective? And then you say, okay, before departure, how do I go with the preparation? How do I put all the information together so that I know about the destination? And when I go to the destination, these are the places I need to visit, and these are the activities that I need to do. So that's exactly the basic use of mind maps. And a couple of minutes, so I'm looking at the clock right now. It's 11 o'clock. We've got half an hour, so pretty much I'm on track, because I do want to leave some time for people to ask questions and make it more interactive. So you can really get out of this session something, because I know that, this is a pretty odd time for a lot of people. You're spending an hour for this particular session. I do want you to get something out of it. So I'm going to share this case study. This is the story from my end. Okay. I've been in this industry for over 25 years. And let me tell you that every single day when I start my computer or when I come in my study, I've got Outlook. That is the number one application that I start. I've got, the document that I need to work on, and mind map. That's what's always running on my computer. So when I was preparing for my CISSP exam, and this is just one screenshot, and there are so many ways you can skin the cat here. So you see here, when I was going through the CISSP modules, and frankly speaking, I started, and this was a great interaction with Sabri in the first place, because I was randomly looking for a lot of content that really excites me for the certification. And honestly, the first video that I came across was Sabri from Kelly. Okay, there were a few others like Sean Harris and a few other videos that I came through IT Dojo that was really good. But I think that really motivated me, because the Sabri community that I find is quite unique and is able to differentiate because of the rich quality of the content that we develop as an organization. So as you can see here, when I started looking into all the different modules and all the different course materials, I didn't purchase anything officially from CISSP. I did purchase something later on, but I started putting that in mind map. So as you can see here, module 1 to module 8, these are the domains. And that was my starting point in terms of how do I go with my CISSP course. Okay. So what happened was, as you can see, and this is just as an example, and a lot of people, frankly speaking, I did my CNE in 3.1 back in the early days, and a lot of people who have done CNE, who has been in this industry for over 20 years, will remember exactly what I'm talking about. And one of the first concepts in Novell and in Microsoft Windows NT 3.5 at that point in time was you have to learn OSI model. Okay, so on the right-hand side, you can see that there are 7 different OSI models: physical data security, all sort of physical data networks. Okay, and so what I did was, I was a bit scared about remembering the OSI layer, because I studied OSI layer over 25 years ago, and it did not make any sense to me, frankly speaking. Okay, but I remember the concept. I was able to pass the exam, but when I set for the CISSP exam, I was like, no, I need to really understand what these concepts are all about, because it's not about a study. I need to bring whatever I'm learning in my practical life professionally, so I can help my clients, I can help people, I can help students, I can coach others, and start giving some emotional touch to these OSI models. So this is what I did on OSI layer. So what I did was, okay, that's one aspect. I set for the exam, passed the exam, fingers crossed, that was good. Okay, I'm so happy about it. Then I started doing for certified ethical hacking course. Okay, and then what I realized was, hang on, when I was going through the CEH content, I realized that there has been a lot of overlap with the CISSP content. Okay, if I would not have developed mind map, what I was going to do was I was going to repeat myself. I was going to remember some of the concepts again and maybe refresh my memory. So basically, pull some information from a short-term memory, put in the long-term memory. I pull some information from a long-term memory, and the drawback with that particular approach is, how do I apply that in my practical life? If I'm just focusing on the study, and if I can't create a collateral that I can use from a day-to-day professional life. So as you can see, what I did was, I created this in the same mind map. I created a different version, but this time what I did was, I added all the modules and all the aspects of CEH course. Okay, so as you can see here, and you will see here. So what happened was, when I read the OSI layer, when I was doing my CISSP, there was reference for OSI layer in CEH, but from a different dimension. Okay, so when I'm doing CISSP, I'm learning about OSI layer from a security point of view, from management point of view, to understand exactly what are the ports, what are the protocols that works, how that information get transmitted from one layer to the other. But when I'm doing the CEH, the thought process was different, because now I'm thinking like a hacker. Okay, so as you can see here, on the left-hand side, I'm doing module 9 as an example, and I'm learning about session hijacking. Okay, And on the right-hand side, I learned something from CISSP, which is about OSI layer, because the drawback of CEH is that it won't go into the level of detail around OSI, the level of detail you will go into when you are preparing for CISSP and vice versa, okay? Because the focus and the objective is different. So now you can see here. So when I was doing the CEH side, and I was learning about session hijacking, then they were talking about exactly the application layer attack. Okay. And when you are thinking about session hijacking and application layer attack, what I could do was I could easily build a relationship with layer 7 in the OSI model. So what happens is, if I need to brush up my concept, I can right click and I can go to the information and automatically it will refresh my memory. So it will start bringing all the concepts that I learned when I was doing my CISSP exam around OSI layers. So you see exactly where I'm coming from. So whatever you have learned, how much time and effort that you have put in to prepare for a certification, pass the exam, you're not losing that IP bird disappear and go in a bin. You are creating the collateral. And guess what? When I was doing this cryptography, and this is another example. So when I was doing the cryptography in module 3 of CISSP, as you can see here, I was learning about hashing, okay? And exactly what hashing is and how does that work, all the different cryptography terms. I will not go into the detail. But when I was doing the system hacking and I'm trying to see exactly how I can hack a Windows system, then the concept that I've learned was around LN hashing, LAN manager hashing, okay? And if you see here, so what I did was I was able to build a relationship. So the benefit of this process has been all around that when I'm putting that information, the information is not going in a vacuum, but if I need to refer back to the information, I have got a visual way to go back and see exactly where the information is. And I'm not either trying to write the information multiple times. I'm not trying to remember the same information. I'm not trying to go to Google and search for the same information, because if I go to Google and if I find something interesting, what I do is I put the link in mind map. That's another way of looking at it, okay? So when you think about it, and this is a screenshot, okay, because I was trying to take a screenshot which didn't work, so I took a photo, and that's why you can see this pixelated image here. As you can see here, when I was doing the LN hashing in Certified Ethical Hacking course, and I have to refer, I can right click here and I can go to the relevant topic here. And I can easily go to the hashing concept that I learned as part of the CISSP process. And there are so many advanced usage that you can do now. One of the great benefits of me going through this particular process now, I'll spend a couple of minutes to talk about exactly how this works from your professional life and professional development point. Because one aspect of us writing all this information is we want to study, we want to get our concepts clear, we want to sit for the exam, we want to pass it, and we want to secure a good job. Yeah. But one of the mentors that I had, who has been my manager, and I've been lucky to have him as my mentor and manager ages ago, before I got into the cybersecurity field. He told me one thing. And the advice he gave me has been very powerful, and which I would like to share with everyone here. The advice he gave me was, you study to use the skill set, you use this skill set in your professional life. So give your 100% in your professional life. However, what I see personally, what he could see personally decades ago, that we don't pay 100% in our professional life, because what we do is we spend a lot of time preparing for something and not really give a lot of value to our organizations, because we are always running behind. We are always trying to catch up on a few things. We are always trying to prepare for certification, and we are not 100% dedicated to the work that we are engaged on a day-to-day basis, that we are providing our support, and the company who is paying our bills, frankly speaking. Okay. So one of the other advantages that I had with MindMap was, and this happened very recently, as part of the IoT process, as part of the CISSP and CEH process, I did some studies on IoT. Okay. So one of the account executive in my organizations, he asked me the question, Sanjay, you know what? we need to write a proposal and we need to put forward a response to a tender in IoT space and look after security in IoT space. So you need to put something in terms of what the methodologies are. Guess what? If I would not have this mind map, if I would not have that linkage between CEH and CISSP and all the concepts within the mind map, it would have taken me like a couple of days, if not weeks, to prepare that information. But because there is a module in CEH which talks about IoT and how you hack IoT devices, and then it talks about the concepts on the IoT and how you secure IoT devices, I had that information. So the only thing I had to do was convert the information that I've got in mind map, put that in a glossy slides, and give it to him. And that was job done. So a couple of things I would like to share with everyone here is if you go to the Slack channel on Sabre, a lot of people have started talking about mind maps. I thought I will give the credit to those people. As you can see, Mike has put in some information around mind map, and you can find some freebies out there in the market. Selma did the same thing. And this is great. And there are a lot of free mind maps available. Okay, so if you're preparing for CISSP, if you're preparing for CH or any other certification, just go to Google and search for mind maps on those certifications, and you will find those sort of mind maps. Because a lot of people who have really passed through some of the important certifications and they have really invested a lot of time and they wanted to give it back to the community, they have gone and created the mind maps and they have started sharing that with the public out there. Okay, and you can also go to this particular website which I found, which is studynotesandtheory.com, and there are free mind maps available. Okay, and it's a good starting point. So there was a time where I downloaded a lot of mind maps from this website for my CISSP exam, but I had to create my own because sometimes when you create your own, you remember. Okay, and if you're a Windows user, I'm not sure exactly because I haven't tried that on my daughter's MacBook. But if you're a Windows user, what you can do is, you can just search for mind maps and you'll find plenty of free tools available. And this is something that you can use not only to get an understanding of exactly what mind map is, but also you start, getting used to those sort of tools and concepts. Okay. Now we have got 15 minutes left, or roughly over 15 minutes. So I thought maybe I will keep, enough time for Q&A.
Awesome, Sanjay. That was outstanding. Super, super interesting topic. So we have a couple questions in chat, and one was from Selma. She had to drop off, but she has a great question. And the question is, if you have any experience or thoughts in incorporating the mental palace technique in using mind maps.
Yeah, so the mental palace technique, okay, so if I understand correctly, exactly what happens is there are so many technologies and so many tricks out there which can be used in mind map, okay. So the mental palace technique, and there are some other techniques like if I'm going in the right track in terms of understanding the question, there is another technique called fishbone. Okay, so what happens is when we go as a speaker and when we go on the stage, present something, even in this webinar, if I'm presenting something, mentally what I have to do is I have to somehow visualize and somehow I have to have the concepts readily available to me in a graphical form or in some form of image that will remind me exactly how I should go about it. Okay, so one thing which happens is in some of the advanced mind map tool, and especially the paid version that I've seen, is those are the techniques. There are tools and templates which are pre-built within those tools. So whether you want to go with the fishbone concept, whether you want to go with the mental palace, whether you want to go with any sort of technique, these are inbuilt template within the tools. And the one that I use, which I'm happy to share with you, is called MindJet Mind Manager. Okay, and some of the information that you have seen in this particular slide is from the tool. It's a paid copy. It's not very expensive, but I find that that's really good because it gives me more flexibility.
Awesome. Definitely appreciate that explanation, Sanjay, for that one. That was great. And I think you hit the nail on the head in answering that. Samuel had a question about what tools he can use for free starters, but you really gave some great examples on Windows. And it sounds like just searching the App Store, there's a lot of different things available. And Kareem, after that, was asking what mind map software you used on this presentation. You just mentioned it. Can you mention it one more time, Sanjay?
Yeah, so the software that I've used is called MindJet, Mind Manager. Okay. And that's right. The one that I'm using is a paid version. It's not very expensive, as I mentioned before. But one thing which I've realized, and I'm happy to share from my experience, is that I have tried a lot of tools. Okay. And I've tried a lot of different ways to manage my time and manage the information that I've got. And the reason for me to show that particular screen or my desktop was to make it very clear that sometimes what happens is when I'm learning about any new topic, when I'm preparing for any certification, I don't want to have information sitting in my notepad. I don't want to have information in my PDF. I don't want to have information in my PPT slides. And then I have to go through this hierarchy of to find that information. And someone says, okay, can you tell me about PKI? Then I will have to remember exactly where that PKI folder is. Then someone says, okay, what about, say, for example, access control? Then I need to find out exactly what access control is, which is the website, and which video I went on YouTube, which I like. So what I do is I use MindJet. And what it gives me is it gives me the flexibility. Say, for example, if I'm watching an IT Dojo video on, say, access control, as an example, and I like that video, I copy the URL in the MindJet, I will right-click and I will put the link in. So that becomes my single point of reference. So after 6 months, after 12 months, if I have to go to the video, I've got the link, I've got the reference point. So at the end of the day, frankly speaking, how many documents do I have to open? Just one, not more than one.
I love that. I know myself, I suffer from tab overload on my browsers. I generally have 25 to 30 open at any given time. So I love the idea of kind of consolidating that and putting it all in one place. We have another question down here. And so Samuel asks, what is your recommendation when you study more than one technology at the same time?
Yeah, and I think that's a very good question. I'm not saying other people's question has been not good, but everyone's question is great. When you are studying on more than one technology, let me tell you, it's more like building a house. Okay, so when you build a house, what you do is the concept and the fundamentals and the principles remains the same. Okay, so whether you are building a single-story house or double-story house, what changes objectively is what's your plan, how you are going to build the foundation. But the foundation is something that I call it as a baseline that remains intact. Okay, so if you're trying to build a double-story house, then your solid foundation will have to be extra solid. So in terms of the technology, what happens is, and this is my personal experience, I may be wrong, people may have a different view, but there are concepts in technology that remains the same. Okay, as I use the example like OSI. Okay. It remained exactly the same 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago. Okay, the concept is still the same. The facade has changed. So when you are talking about technology, the way I will do it is, and this is what I do from a practicality point of view. If I'm learning on two technologies, say for example, one technology could be Microsoft Azure, the other technology can be AWS. Okay, so if I'm learning on two technology, what I will do is I will create two mind maps, just from a clarity point of view, because I don't want to muddy the water and I don't want to gray the domain between AWS and Microsoft Azure. I will create two different mind maps, okay? Because I want to be very clear in my mind that, this is all the topic and concept that's on a different color code, and this is concept on Microsoft Azure. What I will do is once I have gone through phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or, multiple revisions, and I have upskilled myself, I would really find it quite useful, and this is what I've done myself, is at some stage, I will create a different version of the mind map and I will merge those together. And then I will say, if I'm talking about the shared responsibility model in AWS, the shared responsibility model is the same concept that is used in Microsoft Azure. Okay, the only difference will be around exactly how you apply that, and that's not a good example, but where I'm coming from. And that gives you the thought process. And holistically, what you do is you are overloaded with a lot of information, but you are not getting confused with the extra information you've got. Otherwise, when you go from one technology to the other to the next, same as Unix, but because I started on a Unix platform, if you've got Core Unix, you've got Sun Solaris, you've got Linux, and you've got Kali Linux, and you've got all the different Unix, you get confused exactly which commands do I apply on all the different platforms, on all the different flavors of Unix. So start simple and start crawling first before you walk and run. Create two different versions, and if you feel the benefit of merging them together, at some just do that. And that will add a lot of value when it comes to increasing your productivity.
I think that's a fantastic answer there. I really like the idea of starting separate and then working towards kind of merging them. Um, Sam has another question down here. Sam, awesome. Thanks for so many questions. Next question is, how do you keep track of the many concepts using the mind maps, or do I have the information documented in a separate tool? So I think it's more about how you actually organize your either individual mind maps and then how you go about collaborating on them.
Yeah, and it's different. One size doesn't fit all, because I think we are different. The way I organize my files may not be the way you want to organize the file. But let me tell you, I've got two daughters or two kids, and they're my kids, but they work differently. Okay, they have got a different way of, and then I had to use a different strategy to deal with both the kids. Which means that when it comes to mind map, I think one of the concepts that I will share with you after having gray hairs and working in this industry for 25 years plus, and burning midnight oils, burning my fingers, and having few scars on my face, is when you study something, when you use the tool and technology, that's called tactical, but you have to fast forward yourself maybe 6 months and 12 months down the track. And you have to think about exactly, can I use this information? Is there any need for me to use this information after 6 to 12 months? And you have to be a forward thinker, okay? And that's how you organize. So if you think just at that point in time from a tactical point of view, sometimes it works, okay? And you have to push yourself outside the comfort zone to think about how you can use the information after 6 months or maybe 12 months. And that will guide you in terms of how you structure. And one thing which I said that keep it simple. If you can't keep it simple, you can't really differentiate yourself. And there are a lot of security projects that I have done, and sometimes when I go and I say, okay, you're looking for compliance and from a security point of view, and we can get it done within this many months. And people get really surprised at how is that possible? And I say, don't try to boil the ocean from a security point of view, because when you think as a business user, you have to answer two questions. How long is the piece of string from a security point of view, and what are the business risks that you are trying to mitigate? And once you have those two answers, then you have to do your time management and you have to develop all the collateral accordingly.
Awesome, Sanjay. Thank you so much for that. That does look like one of the last questions in chat. Samuel, thanks you for your very helpful answer, Sanjay.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, and one thing which I would like to share, with that particular question is, and this is really, really personal, and this can resonate with everyone. Is what happens is, whether personally or professionally, we have got limited duration, and when we have got inundation of information, a lot of people they experience mental issues, their physical issues, stress, psychological stress and physical stress. It's mainly because what happens is sometimes we as a human being struggle to balance everything at the same time. Okay. And there has been a phase in everyone's life. I had the same phase in my life where, you have got a lot of bombardment of information, and how do you balance that information? And one of the benefits that I found with MindMap was not as a tool. I don't use that as a tool anymore, because the first time I used MindMap, I started using MindMap, and that goes back in history. And then I used this concept as a tool, and then I stopped using it. Okay. But after a few years of gap, I realized that it was getting unstructured, and then I had to go back to the concept of using MindMap not as a tool, but as a productivity tool to manage my work-life balance, to make my life more meaningful, and also to make sure the concept that I'm learning is getting into the permanent space in my memory. Okay. And I'm able to relate it when I'm talking to my clients, when I'm talking to my business people, when I'm talking to the people in my organizations. Because if I don't remember the concept, for example, if I don't know exactly what layer 3 switches are, exactly how it works, and if I don't really map it from an OSI point of view, I may be able to build the relationship with senior execs. But if I'm not able to rub my shoulder with the network operations people, I lose the trust. So as a security advisor, I need to have that confidence with the technical people that when I go as an advisor, they know that I understand the concept and I can talk the same language. And I'm the person, based on the experience, I can translate that information and convey the language in a non-technical form to the senior execs. Because a lot of time technical people, and we are guilty ourselves, a lot of technical people, we struggle to convey the message in a simplistic manner to the senior exec and vice versa. And I think having that information, building that knowledge base, building this capability around you does help you in terms of not only managing your time, but when we go at your workplace, you are able to have that discussion confidently with your stakeholders. And at any single point in time, if people say, go and deliver this within the next 5 hours, guess what? You know that you have done this training and you have got that information in your mind map, and you can, the only thing you need to do is Control F and find that information. I hope that helps.
I think that was another fantastic answer. I love the real world kind of applicable answer there. You're talking about talking with the execs and then brushing shoulders with the network engineers. I think, you know, a lot of professionals would find themselves in that situation. So I think that's awesome. V, any final thoughts?
No, I just want to thank Sanjay for your time. I know that this is late in the hour for you, but thank you for the incredible presentation. I hope that all of you enjoy it. And then next week, we're going to have another session. We will send the information for everybody on Slack. But just as an example, it's like, as Sanjay was talking about his presentation, I was also building my own mind map. So paper and pen also works. And it's a good start, but it's really helpful how to make the connections if you're studying for multiple certifications or you're studying for multiple career paths. So this is a great tool. And thank you, Sanjay, for your time. And we will talk with everybody on Slack. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone, for joining.
Thank you, guys.